Okay. We're going to call the meeting to order at 4:31, and we're going to begin with the pledge.
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you guys get anything that says join the meeting?
No, just view the agenda.
All right.
Does that matter?
There's no action item,
Okay.
so there's nothing to join.
All right, so gotcha. Technically join. Okay, Matt. All you.
Thank you. So this is that time of the year. I do want to thank you all. I know we send over a lot of information, a lot of data and analysis. So I appreciate you taking that time to review and really digest the proposal for next year's budget as we take the next step and review going forward. So I do appreciate, because this is a couple long meetings, a lot of details, so thank you. So what we're going to do this evening is we have the PowerPoint summary. So I'm going to go through the first few PowerPoint slides just to give an overall view of the budget, and then we can get right into the details and go into the worksheets and go page by page through every account, every line item for the board's review. We have a mostly veteran board, but Michelle, this is your first year. So as we go through, please feel free to interrupt me, ask questions, make comments, and at any point, board members can make a motion to adjust the budget as you see fit. That's your role and responsibility, is to review the budget and then bring forth one to the budget committee, which is the next phase in this process. So once the board does submit a board-approved operating budget and warrant articles to the budget committee, they will have an opportunity to review the budget, at which point they can make adjustments, and then it will go to the public hearing, which will allow the public the opportunity to comment on the budget, and that's in January. And then in February, there's a deliberative session where the community actually has the ability to make changes to the budget. So we will present the budget via the PowerPoints, and then the community will have their input. Then finally, one last step. This is a multi-stepped process, so bear with me. We will have, there will actually be a vote on the operating budget and associated warrant articles. That will be on ballot in the second Tuesday of March. So that is kind of the overall view. Now, in board docs, we've included a number of documents for your review. That includes this PowerPoint that provides actually some pretty good detail on the budget. We have the really detailed worksheets that goes into excruciating narrative on all budgetary items. We also have an Excel spreadsheet with line items that shows 3-year historicals, as well as the default budget. We have some supplemental information, including salary schedules, our revenue estimates. We have warrant articles and expendable trusts, so balances on our building maintenance expendable trust, as well as our special education expendable trust. So without further ado, we will go right into the budget, unless there's any questions, heading into it. All right, great. I look forward to it. I hope you are too.
As he chugs his coffee.
Let me take a big sip of caffeine. So, when we're developing the budget, obviously we need to look at how to best fund the school to operate, right? Just our basic operations. But ultimately, what we're looking to achieve is providing that important educational component to our students, and really provide that not only a safe atmosphere, but also an atmosphere that's conducive to learning and to nurturing and empowering our students. Because ultimately we're hoping to graduate out our students, not only out to Winnicott, but then ultimately out into our community. So we're trying to create or nurture these human beings, these students, so that they can be productive and take that next step from 8th grade into Winnicott and then into the world. So with that being said, the budget looks at how do we allocate resources to achieve that goal, right? Where are we prioritizing that has the greatest impact on our students, and that can drive not only the operations of the school, but drive the best performance. So when we're looking at the overall budget, we have 4 kind of primary objectives that we're looking at. One is we're always looking, and these are similar to objectives that you've seen in years past, because these are long-term goals. So we are providing multi-tiered systems of support. That's not only for our students that are struggling. We're also looking at how can we challenge our more advanced students. Additionally, we're looking at long-term development of our curriculum, as well as how do we not only those instructional practices, but also the assessment practices across all of our grade levels K through 8. We're always looking at our culture and climate. That's really an important piece of school operations, because not only students can't learn if they don't feel safe, if they're not in an environment that is conducive to learning. So that involves not only students but also staff, and ensuring that we maintain our unique culture and atmosphere that we have here at Seabrook. And then finally, we always have to keep in mind fiscal responsibility to our community and to the taxpayers of Seabrook, because we are a part of Seabrook. Not all of our community members have children in school, and they are paying for school operations. So it's something that we need to always keep in mind while budgeting and maintain that responsibility. So when looking at budgets, both long-term and short-term, enrollment is a really important data point. We've actually seen some enrollment declines at Seabrook. You'll see this current year we have 645 students, and we are projecting a decline to 631 students next year. And if you look the last couple of years, that's only come down. In 21-22 was 663. A few years prior, we were over 700 students. You can see that in our grade levels. So when you look at the middle school level, there's class sizes of 70 and 80 kids. But then when you look at the elementary grade levels, we're in the high 50s, 60 level. And it's every year we're advancing, we're graduating a larger class and filling a smaller class in that kindergarten grade level. So we've seen that trend over the number of years, and you've seen that with some of our staffing decisions in prior years and in this current budget year based on those enrollment declines. So for fiscal year 25, we are proposing an operating budget of $17,993,951. That's an increase of 3.49% over last year. Now, with every budget, there's budget drivers. There's those areas that significantly affect the budget as a whole. Sometimes we see large increases in special education or transportation. And this year is no different. We have a number of non-discretionary items in this year's budget that are really disproportionately affecting the overall budget. So one of those areas is just inflation, period. Cost escalation has really affected all of our accounts across the board when you're looking at supplies, books, equipment, food service, software, repair, maintenance, technology, any sort of labor. So if we're contracting out anyone, it costs more. It costs more for people to perform the services. Furniture. But we've really been hit hard with inflation over the last couple of years. I know you've all seen it at home with your grocery bills and various services that you're paying for just to live. That cost of living has increased. Additionally, we are seeing a significant increase in health insurance premium costs. So we received a guaranteed maximum rate for our health insurance premiums of 23.7%. We received that in October, and then we get the actual rate in March. So the guaranteed maximum rate is the highest, but they revisit that, like I said, in March. So that could adjust slightly down. However, it could also stay at that level. We do have a stewardship report where we look at what's involved in our claims history with Health Trust and our actual employees. I do not anticipate that there'll be much of a delta with that health insurance based on our 18-month trailing claims history. Obviously that'll change. There'll be some change in 6 months, but looking at more of the specifics, I do not anticipate much of a delta there. And that's something that the state has seen across the board. I think the average is just under 20% for municipalities, so that's towns and schools. And then I'm sure you've all seen in Wall Street Journal and different news outlets, the cost of health insurance has increased nationwide, not just in schools, but across all organizations. Additionally, we've seen an increase in our special education and general education transportation costs. Special education transportation costs are for our students on IEPs who require either in-district transportation or out-of-district to an out-of-district placement where they're attending a school outside of Seabrook. General education is our normal bus routes as well as our athletics, our field trips, other transportation, such as a music trip or etc. We just signed we will be entering into year one of a 5-year contract with First Students, which was brought to the board in the last few months.
And Matt, real quick, they were the only one to submit a bid, correct?
Right, First Student was the only bidder for that contract. Student transportation is a very difficult industry. There are really only 2 players in New Hampshire. It's First Student and STA. We tried to solicit some Massachusetts transportation providers and some that are kind of on the up-and-coming transportation providers that do special education but haven't quite entered that next level to general ed and the large buses. However, it is very difficult business. The drivers have unionized at First Students and really in all of bus transportation. It's a very undesirable job. It's a difficult job, so it's very hard to find drivers. And costs have increased for buses. Just like everything else, the cost of purchase buses are much higher than they were 5 years ago. And then the last item on this page is we are transferring the social worker position that was on the ESSER grant to the operating budget. And that's due to the, as you know, the ESSER funds are expiring September of 2024. So per the ESSER plan, we had included 3 positions that we were going to transfer into the operating budget over the last couple of years. We already transferred a case manager, and I think a
Intervention.
in BCBA maybe. So this is the last position that we're transferring or proposing to transfer over.
We can discuss that at some point, correct?
Yeah, so we're going to be going through this is just a high
Okay.
level summary. We'll go through every account and revisit all these items. So I just wanted to give you an overall picture of the budget and kind of big items.
Okay.
Additionally, we are adding a BCBA position, and that's based on student need for the students' IEPs, as well as a registered behavior technician (RBT) position, again based on student need. We are proposing the transfer of the Seabrook Adventure Zone (SAS) contribution that is currently being funded this year out of the ESSER grant. Again, that is expiring, so we are proposing to transfer that to the operating budget. As you recall, that was we had previously funded $70,000, $35,000 for middle school, $35,000 for elementary. Last year we cut that in half, and we transferred the funding of the $35,000 into ESSER. So now we're moving that funding back into the operating budget.
So looking to re-add the $35,000 that was cut last year?
Well, we're moving it from
The
ESSER.
first 35.
So we were funding 70,000. We cut 35, and we're funding the other 35 via ESSER fund, but the ESSER funds are no longer there, so we're moving that into the operating budget. And prior to the last 2 years, the $35,000 was in the operating budget for the middle school for the last close to 10 years. So. We are also seeing food service spending reverting to normal levels. We had reduced our food service budget and by under budgeting those accounts per our spend down plan last year. As you recall, we had a surplus, so that was one manner in which to reduce that surplus. So on the flip side, those are the increases. On the flip side, we have areas that we have reductions. So that really includes. I just want to note across the board, we took a careful look at every account where we could potentially level fund or reduce based on that decline in student enrollment. So you'll see many of those accounts where supplies, equipment, you may not actually see a decline in the account, but because of inflation, the per unit cost is up. But we reduced those number of units, right? So based on enrollment. Inflation artificially increases the cost, but we were looking where we can reduce based on the number of students. Additionally, we are proposing the reduction of a elementary classroom teacher. I talked about enrollment earlier, and this is where that comes in at the elementary level, where we have across the entire school, our average class is just under 16 students, except in one grade level projected for next year, grade 3. We're looking at 13 students per in each class, so we're looking at reducing not one of those teachers, but one of those positions, because we don't know, we don't anticipate losing a person. We have a long-term sub currently that will be gone. However, if we reduce that position, that will bring that class size up to 18 in the grade 3 class level. Now that's a class size that we're very comfortable with. That is still a small class size particularly when we look at the amount of intervention support that we have at the elementary level, our EA support It's a very very reasonable class size. Additionally, we're looking to eliminate one part-time custodial position. We're looking to reduce our full-time technology assistant to a half-time position, and then we're reducing 6 educational associate positions. So those positions are currently vacant. So again, we don't anticipate anyone losing any of their positions. But we had to take a really hard look at this budget. We do a staffing analysis every year where we look at each department and what is necessary, what staffing levels is necessary in order to achieve our goals and to provide our operations of the school. So that's where you see on the facility side we're reducing a part-time. On the elementary side, we're seeing smaller class sizes come in, so that requires less teachers. EAs are oftentimes that's a combination of special education and general education positions. We take a look at our special education students and what services they are required, and then we staff accordingly. Additionally, we're looking to reduce a full-time ESOL teacher. Now, this is a situation where we're adding an ESOL teacher at the SAU level to provide us flexibility to use across multiple districts. This year, we did not need a full 2 ESOL teachers. It was really closer to 1.5 or slightly less than that, and we anticipate that need to be slightly lower next year. So we have allocated some of the time from the SAU ESOL teacher to service Seabrook for that extra 20-30%.
And that's for people that English isn't their first language and they need assistance.
Yeah, so that's English as a second language. Sorry for not noting that. That's an area where our population changes from year to year, so it's nice to have the flexibility to move the personnel to our various districts. So, for example, this year when it kind of needed a full-time ESOL teacher, but they didn't have it, so we shifted resources. So the current ESOL teacher will have the opportunity to apply for the SAU position, but that is a reduction here in Seabrook. Additionally, we're looking to eliminate 3 summer facilities work positions. We are under budgeting health insurance slightly. Like I said, I don't anticipate a huge or much of a change from the GMR to the actual, but we are hedging against a potential differential there. And then we are seeing a pretty significant decrease in our district placement tuition on the special education department side. Finally, before we get into the individual accounts,
Can I ask a quick
Yep.
question? Can you go back 1 sec?
Yep.
So what are summer facilities work positions? Are they like maintaining the building?
So in the summer, we hire part-time summer work
Yep.
to do various projects around, whether it's grounds work or painting or moving furniture. It's those type of it's a kind of a low-cost summer part-time role.
Okay.
So embedded in the entire operating budget are cost of living adjustments. We have 3 classifications of employees. We have our non-union employees. That's our administrators, our administrative assistants, our technology staff, our facility staff, food service, and then we also have our teachers that fall under the C collective bargaining agreement, and then our educational associates who fall under CESPA. So C As you know, the CBA passed last year. So embedded in this contract is a 3% cost of living adjustment for all of our teachers. Our non-union employees, we benchmark against documented inflation. So that is the Consumer Price Index, CPIU, for the Portsmouth region, so our geographic area. And we look at the prior year, so that's July of 2022 to July of 2023 in this case, and that came in at 2.8%. So our non-union employees have a 2.8% cost of living adjustment embedded. And then our CESPA employees have no cost of living adjustment included in the budget. That's because their cost of living adjustments and steps are embedded in a separate warrant article that we'll get to after the operating budget that the voters will vote on for under their new CBA. All right, any questions before we go into the budget worksheets?
I have one more question about the decrease in out-of-district placement. Are we embedding them in, not embedding them, but are we putting them inside of the building then? Are we having more, are we trying to keep them in the building and facilitate things here, or have we had more children that would need out-of-district placement move out of district?
Well, I mean, the hope is that we always are able to bring our students back into district. However, that's not always the case. Typically, it's because a student graduates on to Winnicott or moves out of Seabrook. We see sometimes we see increases because we have students that come into move into the Seabrook or require new services. And in some cases, they've made improvements where they can come back into the school district. I can't speak to the exact case in these situations, and we don't want to identify anyone. But I can probably get a little bit more detail that I can kind of peripherally tell you about. But those are the main reasons for either an increase or a decrease in out of district tuition.
Gotcha.
All right, so we have about 150 or 160 pages to go through on the budget. So, so again, thank you. I know this can be tedious. Again, please interrupt if you have any questions, comments. We really encourage this to be a collaborative, budget and process where we talk through any questions, any concerns that you may have, because ultimately we want to bring forth a budget that not only services our students in the best possible way, but also is acceptable to our community and that we feel that can get passed that ballot ultimately. Because again, as you know, should this not pass, we go to the default budget, in which case we have to end up redoing the entire budget with that reduced amount. All right, so page 3 is actually our largest account. This represents the bulk of our teaching staff. This is salary certified staff. Total budget of $4,285,509. This includes the aforementioned reductions of the ESOL teacher and the elementary classroom teacher. I'll also note on many of these budget pages, you'll see notes about grant funding. So on this particular page, you'll see that Title I is funding a number of positions. We receive a good amount of Title I funding, and most of which is being paid to these salaries. So you'll see there's a good number. That's a good amount of our intervention support. We have another 4 interventionists in the operating budget, but we have those 3 teachers and 3 tutors that also offer intervention support. That's so critical for our students because that's where we identify students that may not be hitting benchmarks, either pull them out for group support or push in support in small groups in the classroom. And we've made tremendous progress, particularly at the elementary level, with some of that tier two support. And we're looking to expand that further into the middle school as well. That's an identified area of need that we looked at this year, in addition to some of the tutoring support that Colleen has been looking to implement as well. You'll see the following pages include the actual teachers and their current positions. I will also note we had a preschool teacher in the general ed in this account. That's been transferred into special education. The teacher hasn't changed, the position hasn't changed. However, previously we had 2 preschool rooms, 1 special education, 1 general ed. That's since been adjusted to be inclusive classrooms. So that's really a special education position. So we made that change. Any questions about teachers?
So I really am struggling with reducing a classroom teacher, especially with the test scores. And we may have an average of 18 students, which I know 5th grade has more than 18, but we may have an average of 18 students, but we don't know what that's going to be going forward.
In addition to the fact that,
We just got them raises.
well, not only did we just get them raises, but some of them, are funded through the ESSER grant, which is going to be ending in 2024 as well.
Well, none are being funded through the ESSER grant. That's
No, other positions.
Intervention teachers, though, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're going to be losing some of that intervention support that's giving support to the classes.
So there's 2 current positions that are being funded via ESSER, and those are being transferred to Title I.
Okay.
So
It says this funds allow, though, so are we sure that that's going to happen, or?
We anticipate that. We're budgeting for that to occur, yes.
Okay, but still, I definitely don't think teachers is where we need to cut the budget at all. If we have a reduction in students, that's just all the more help that those classes can get because the teacher's going to be able to focus on those students. I don't think that cutting teachers or even EAs who are in there, because these positions, granted that one elementary teacher says 90,000, but the EAs and the teacher positions are really not a bulk of the budget. It takes 4 EAs salaries to make 1 salary of a social worker. So why are we going to remove EA positions when they are actively involved in the classrooms, supporting students, giving them the education that they're here for when their test scores are down? There's got to be other places that we can cut positions, and I don't think a teacher EA is the answer at all, especially with the position we're in right now.
Yeah, so we're looking at what is a reasonable class size, and it is our professional opinion that 18 is a very reasonable class size that we can achieve
But we don't know where.
results.
Right, but look at how
Could
many
that teacher though be like slid
Evento-WAC
from?
students we've had come in.
I'm sorry?
We've had a lot of new students enrolled here and there. There's nothing to say that more students are not going to be enrolled.
Well,
And then what are we going to bring? And then trying to get the position back in is going to be harder.
what we've seen is only a decline in enrollment, not an increase in enrollment. So we're basing it on what historicals, on what our enrollment has been in the past, and then what we're projecting going forward. So obviously with budgeting, we're making assumptions and we're forecasting based on the information we have. However, that's where we've been trending, is a decline in enrollment. We are trying to bring forth a fiscally responsible budget that can pass, because if this doesn't pass, we're making bigger cuts.
Oh,
And
right.
we're
We're
making
gonna-
really
What are
deep cuts.
What are the class sizes at the other SAU elementary and middle schools that are compared to ours? Because I know that in our district specifically, we have a lot more children with varying level of needs, and that fluctuates from year to year. And so that's my concern, is not being able to appropriately address those needs as they come and they go, as they wax and they wane. But the other schools, I think they have also similar or smaller class sizes than we do.
They also have small class sizes, and we're making reductions or proposing reductions, and have already made reductions in those schools as well.
With that teacher position, could they be utilized as almost like a flow teacher to help the grades that need the help? I mean,
They
would
always
we
need
slide,
coverage.
well, yeah, they to slide up into the middle school. Again, like it's hard to cut a teacher's position, but add, and again, like the biggest talk around town is how many social workers and all sorts of this other stuff is coming into the school, yet we're looking to cut teachers, and I think I'd have to agree that a teacher's spot. So, and also with the EAs, you said there's 6 open vacant positions, so
We're just not budgeting.
you're just not
pay
gonna
those people
budget
that are not here.
to fill those
Right.
positions in the,
Correct. So
in
no
this
one will be
next school
losing
year.
a job. It's just their current vacancies.
So what grade, you say one elementary classroom teacher, what grade is that?
Well, we're looking at specifically the grade 3 level for next year. However, it's not, again, we don't anticipate an actual teacher losing a job.
Based on the enrollment size of that.
it's just not
second
bringing
grade
in a
class is
teacher to
what you're
fill that.
Right, so that'll be 18 students in a class
So-
in grade 3. Which is small. It's very reasonable.
I'm
It is
confused, so
if
how
you're in
can
the
we
classroom
eliminate a
teaching this group of
classroom
kids,
teacher but
so-
not, no one lose their job?
Because we have a long-term sub in 3rd grade right now.
Okay,
Or 3rd grade, yeah.
And
So she
because
would
that
just
third
not be-
grade's going up to 4th grade and second's going to 3rd, we won't, with the class sizes, you don't need as many teachers.
Right, but
to
you don't
fill
know what's
our-
gonna come later on down the road.
Every year, we're losing enrollment. So we're graduating out larger class sizes and
No,
bringing
she's
in
not.
smaller class sizes.
Yeah, but she's not.
So it's hard to justify maintaining the current staffing levels based on our enrollment. And that's, so we'll take all the teachers you can give us. Trust me, Brian over here would love to keep an extra teacher. We can use them, but we also understand our responsibility, as the administration and the board to budget responsibly.
well, I hope you remember that as we get further down into this packet. Because that teacher's position is pennies compared to the rest of the budget, and the rest of the budget are not teachers. So I hope that we keep that in mind. I am not in favor of reducing a teacher.
And-
There's always gonna be a place that we can use a teacher.
And you can absolutely, that's your decision. So you can right now, you can make a motion right now to keep that teacher, and we will put it back in. And Brian will have a big smile on his face.
Will I make a motion to,
Can,
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, can we work through
yeah,
And
we can
then
do that
make
if you
the
want to,
motion
and just,
at the-
yeah, we can do
just so we
that,
can see?
what we're doing.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just want to. Yeah, I
That's
just
a
want to
good
have
idea.
all the info if possible, and then. But if you want to do that, that's fine. That would be my suggestion, if possible.
We love teachers.
We
But we
want
also, you
Well, it
know,
seems like we have less and less teachers and more of the other staff. Because we really do.
so I'm assuming you mean special education?
I'm seeing everything. I mean, we have a lot of positions that are under grant money, and that grant money eventually runs out, and then it goes into the bottom line budget.
Well, we had 3 positions that we're transferring in.
Right, and how much are those salaries apiece with
And
insurance?
those are primarily special education,
Right.
which we're required by law.
We're
to
required, but we're
provide.
not required to put the town into bankruptcy. Like, that's my whole thing, is that I 100% understand that we're required by law to provide an education. But we also need to use the staff that we have efficiently. And if we're required to provide transportation, we need to make sure that we're providing transportation with a reasonable amount. I mean, we get money for special education, and I understand that we don't get a lot, but we need to try to gear the finances a little bit towards, we need to try to use the staff that we already have. If you look at the amount of staff that we've added on in the last couple of years, because we've gotten ESSA grants and we've gotten all these grants, I mean, I'll be the first to take the fall for it. I've been on the board for the last 3 years, and shame on me for not paying attention. Because it really took me to have to look through this packet and say, and you know, like in one of the pages where it says that we're going to take 2 positions to offset it into the IDA grant, we're basically borrowing from Peter to pay Paul down the road. Because you can take the grant money and you can put all these positions under the grant money, but at the end of the day, you're gonna be putting them in the budget. And this is, I mean, I look at the town budget and everybody's at the town hall raking through the budget and no one looks at the school budget. And when I look at the school budget, I'm gonna be honest with you, I failed this town, budget-wise. Because I should have totally went through every page like I have. And that's what I have to say about it.
Well, and the problem with the grants and the ESSER funds and stuff, it's like,
The grants
it
are
all sounds great up front, like we get the money, we get the positions, but every year we roll more and more stuff into the operating budget, and then this is a budget that never is going
So this
down,
is-
and it's a lot of money to put on taxpayers who already feel that we're so far behind in our, like, what our levels should be, that creating more and more of these positions that come from ESSER funds, and then we go through the budget, we just roll them right into operating budgets, and their salaries are pretty significant, and it just grows and grows and grows, and people are getting pretty, I mean, we have to find ways to make cuts to make this thing
So
go down.
again, the ESSER funds expire next year, so this is the last budget cycle that anything would go from ESSER into the budget. And there's only been 3 positions, of which 1 is proposed this year. So 2 have gone in the operating budget in prior years. So I'm hesitant to say that we've moved all that much more. And those 2 positions have been approved by the board, this board right here. So,
Shame on me.
and those positions, I believe, they were special education positions, where if they weren't funded by ESSER, we'd have to put in the operating budget anyway, because we were required to in order to provide those services.
Yeah, but Matt, we can provide the services without adding personnel every year. We can still provide the services. We have a ton of staff here we have an occupational therapist, but then if you look down in the packet, we have an account that says it's to provide funds for contracted services provided to both special education as well as typical students. So we're bringing in outside services as well.
Yeah, so if we have more of a caseload than that one person can do, which it oftentimes can be the case because of the services that are required by our students, then we need to contract that out. If we don't hire someone, then we're contracting out all those positions at a much higher position rate, okay, which we're legally
No, we need
required
to use the funds that we have
So-
responsibly.
Those we absolutely do, and I stand by that 100%.
Yeah, well-
We look at every penny when we budget, and I think we've shown that to you in years prior, and in this budget, I feel very comfortable with the way we budgeted. And of course, this is the opportunity to discuss all of these items, and we can make adjustments as we see fit. But from a special education perspective, it is non-discretionary when we're looking at providing services to students. When we do a staffing analysis every year on what caseload each of our various teachers or specialists are able to do, is only a certain number of hours in a day to provide those services for our students. When you look at special education costs, statewide,
I have.
well,
I've lived on these sheets for the last 3 weeks.
no, I'm telling you statewide,
I know, I have done that too.
25% of the state's operating budget as a whole goes to special education. 25%.
What about the rest of the kids that get left behind because of the extra funds used for special ed there? eating up that cost, because we have to keep contributing to that now the rest of the kids.
Well, I would suggest, I certainly hope, we certainly do everything in our power to not let kids fall behind, but again, this isn't our decision. These are federal laws, these are state laws, and when I say the state is 25%, what is Seabrook? 17%. So what that means is we actually have some efficiencies, and we're saving $1.275 million less than the state average. That's a lot of money. So I take a little bit of issue with suggesting that we're not looking at dollars, because we are well below the state average when it comes to special education costs.
Okay,
Other questions?
because I think he's right. When you look at the budget, it looks like we need to provide all of this because of special ed. But when you really start paying attention to the accounts payable every week, going through and signing them and looking at what's being spent, I'm not gonna say anymore. There's a reason I haven't signed off on them. There are some things that are being approved that the money is not, it's not being used efficiently.
So if you have any questions, please ask, because I haven't had any questions about inefficient use of funds, other than the one staffing member that you brought up at the last board meeting, which I think Meredith addressed. So moving on from special education, all of our favorite topic.
It's not about
It's
favorite
not.
topic.
It's
It's about doing what's best for taxpayers too.
I agree 100%, Kelly. I 100%.
I mean, see,
I
what's
know,
poor,
and
remember? We're poor. We have to be careful. We have to see what we can afford.
I agree. We're on the same page there, and I don't mean to like.
Hold on.
I'm
On page 8, sorry, you said reduction of 4 EA positions, right?
Yep.
But didn't on the PowerPoint we talked about 6
Yep.
vacant positions? What's the?
Yeah. So this is the general ed
Okay.
EAs,
Oh, okay.
and then there's 2 special ed
Okay, that makes
EAs.
sense.
That'll be
Yep.
when we get there. So page 8, we're budgeting $216,421. Clearly, my eyes are going as I get older because I'm having trouble reading the screen. Ridiculous. And that reflects that reduction of 4 PA positions. Page 10, we budgeted $2,000 for tutors. This is for 504 tutoring. That's level funded. Page 11, we level funded our substitute teachers at $100,500. That is our substitute teachers. You'll see we actually spent $150,000 last year. This account can be somewhat volatile. Oftentimes when you see a large increase, it's due to a long-term substitute. So if someone goes out on medical leave or maternity, you'll see an increase.
But didn't we just increase it last year though, from 110 to 120 now?
We are.
Last September, you guys just approved it from 110 to 120.
I'm sorry. We are. This is the change from 110 to 120 this year. So for 24, 25.
I actually had a question for page 9.
Yep.
And this might be because I'm new here, but we pay for somebody to monitor the bus that goes to the rec.
Yes. Actually, we periodically have monitors on other bus routes as well.
Those ones I understand because I know those ones are typically special ed, and that is a whole different ballgame. But just for all the kids that go to the rec, I guess I don't understand that.
We actually voted her back in because the rec bus
Terrible.
was
A
out
couple
of
years ago, we
control.
proposed to
Okay.
reduce
And
that
actually,
position.
to be honest,
and
she,
the board
That's
voted
why I was asking.
She makes things a lot more smoother for the bus driver.
Okay.
Behavior can be a challenge on buses, so
Yeah.
whenever
And they
we
listen.
try to strategically use monitors wherever possible.
You're saying 120 for the sub rate, but I'm looking.
So
Yeah,
the
I'm-
per day
120 per
rate.
day. Thank you.
I was like, 100,000 is what I have for the budget.
What is this? Okay.
That's
Meter
what I was
stipend.
thinking.
Yes.
I was missing.
All right, page 12, repair and maintenance of equipment, we're budgeting $2,700. So this would be, for repairs for any equipment that we may have. Page 13, we budgeted $26,142 for rental lease equipment. That is our copiers, as well as laminator and postage meters. We do have an SAU-wide copier contract, which saves us about 30% on an annual basis. Page 14, we budgeted $57,265. So these are general supplies at both the elementary and middle school level, primarily for our classrooms. So you'll see we actually have it's broken down by general office, art class, foundation, science, guidance, zones, music, etc. Page 16, we budgeted $66,802 for books, print media. So this is an increase. And the reason for that is, well, for one, we have a pretty significant, we've been seeing cost inflation across the board, but you'll see under elementary, 4 or 5 bullets down, Fly 5 final year, $18,980. That was previously an ESSER, so that is an ESSER cost that's moving into the operating budget.
Did we use that prior? So if it was previously, where was it before it went into ESSER? Before it went into ESSER funds, where?
That was a new program in ESSER. So that was in ESSER last year. This year it's being funded out of Title I, and we're proposing moving it into the operating budget next year.
Currently is Title I, which
Currently.
means the federal government sends us money for that. The Title I is
Title I is a federal grant, yes.
So the grant covers that.
Why are we moving from, why is the proposal to move from Title I to the operating budget? if
Well,
it's currently there?
every year we look at our federal grants funds and see where, because we get slightly different amounts every year and where we can best optimize it. So for example, with IDEA, we have to be strategic about what we fund those grant funds with, because we could also be reimbursed for Medicaid reimbursement, and we can't if it's IDEA funded, because that's double dipping from the federal government. So every year we take a look at what's being funded in our title funds and IDEA, previously with ESSER, and then we move it around based on the amount of money we have, and then Medicaid reimbursement, et cetera. So that you'll see changes on every year on grant funds.
What is that though?
I was just gonna say, what is the
What is
Fly 5?
So that's SCL programming.
And that is,
So
we don't need that. So you're telling me that, so is it gonna be covered by Title I or is it gonna be covered by the budget?
It's currently funded by Title I. It's going to be funded by the budget next year.
Brian, can you give us a heads up on what that is?
Yeah.
So every one of our classrooms will work on model cares, cooperation, assertion, responsibility, and self-control. And these are the weekly lessons and the lesson plans that go along with that. And it is a 3-year contract, so contractually we're obligated to sort of payment program. So, and all of our teachers use it, all of our classes use it. We've seen significant decrease in student behavior and increase in students who's able to access the book. So it's been a big part of our school-wide transformation in the way that students treat each other and the language that we use at school. So if we didn't have this, we'd be something else. But we're 3 years into that implementation, and it's working.
So either way, it has to be funded because it's a contract. So it's a matter of can it remain in Title I, or does it have to be put into the operating budget?
Well, we've allocated different funds or different purpose for those Title I funds. So, I mean, put it back in Title I, we'd have to take something out and put it in the operating budget. And what's currently allocated is really primarily salaries for those interventionists.
So can I ask a question off topic, just because I'll forget if I don't ask now? So the Title I funding, did we just get a Title I grant and we're using it for tutoring? Is that what, am I thinking about the right thing? What did we just get a grant from for tutoring?
We receive Title I funding every year. It's
No, I
based
know,
on free and reduced lunch percentages, and
Yeah.
so that amount varies from year to year. We are pulling some funds from that grant to offset tutoring costs for the after-school program, which Lauren can speak to. But we also use it to fund some intervention positions. We do from time to time use it to fund some curriculum. It can be used for some professional development. We have a requirement to set aside some Title I funds for homeless support and intervention. But am I missing any other major categories, Lauren? Homeschool, right. Parent involvement activities, family involvement activities, like we'll be supplementing a little bit of tomorrow night's.
Brian recently got a grant, enrichment grant. Maybe that's what you're thinking of?
No, she's correct.
The middle school math, is that what you're talking about? Middle school math
Yeah,
tutoring.
I don't know. The only reason why I'm asking is because in the so when I did the invoices, I noticed that teachers are getting tutoring, but in the contract, their teacher contract, it states that they are to be the responsibility is to be available for after school help and tutoring. So I'm just not sure if it's in their contract why we're paying extra.
So
It's $50. We're paying them $50 an hour.
I'm happy to respond to that if you do. I mean, I would say that like typical responsibilities are to service children who are in your own classroom, right? Who need some extra support and are keeping up with the everyday curriculum. The tutoring that's being provided after school is to close gaps from children who are kind of behind the grade level curriculum. And so it's different from your day-to-day job, and I don't want to speak for the union, but I think if we were to require all of our teachers to stay after school to tutor all children, right, from across grade levels in specific skill areas, we'd be facing a grievance because that's not really what that contract language is intended to support. And the practice has been that such programs are provided with an additional stipend.
And with this Fly 5, this is if you don't go with that, you have to purchase a new program to teach social emotional learning. This is not something that we can come up with our own curriculum on. This is like a packet that they give you, and they're like, here's all your lessons, here's all.
There's a really high quality folder that goes in line with our responsive classroom. So responsive classroom is the philosophy that we use, the day-to-day interaction with students, how we talk to students. It creates common language for our classrooms. And as students transition from grade to grade, there's an expectation of how we talk to each other, how we treat each other, how we cooperate. I can tell you it's really working. It's the impact that we're seeing in the way that our students treat each other, and the way that our classroom function, it works. And so it ties to our philosophy. Anything else would be a splinter off, and it would be just, to restart something that would be really impactful for our teachers and what we wrote.
Well, and you said we have to pay for it because it's a contract. It's the third year, so it's not like we could just remove it anyway.
I just have a hard time wrapping my head around some of the numbers. It's like we pay $10,000 for a math program. We're paying almost $19,000 for a social emotional learning program. It's just, it seems slightly backwards to me, but if this is what we have to go off of.
So I think the $10,000 is just a renewal cost for the consumables for the math program. The investment in that was largely paid out of ESSER funds over the prior 2 years, and it was a much larger investment. I can't tell you the exact numbers, like in the 50s.
It makes it hard to look at when you look at the numbers
Yeah,
side
I think
by
it was
side
roughly
on a
50,000.
budget sheet.
No, that's a good point, but yeah, to Meredith's point, we already invested $50,000 to $60,000 in Eureka.
So this is just the papers that they would fill out every
The
year,
consumables,
that then they,
right.
you have to renew those every year.
Matt, real quick, on page 15, I don't need to go back a page, but it says agenda books. Are those for the teachers or the students?
Students.
Those are these students.
Okay, I don't know.
Because my students don't use theirs.
My kids, I've
But,
never
yeah.
seen an agenda book. And the reason I know that is because I know Hampton Falls is very strict about they teach their students to do their assignments, write them down. They're very structured, and that's the only reason why I know is because that was brought up to me from a parent about Hampton Falls, her child in the way.
Southampton does it as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's only $990, but if we never see them and they're not using them,
Is that all grade
maybe we
levels?
should try to
in middle
encourage
school?
them to use them.
I've never seen
Yeah, Grace
an
has been
agenda.
there 3 years,
book.
this is the first year that I've actually gotten her to bring one home, because I,
didn't see this before.
So that's good info for me.
Yeah, because they're really helpful for the other schools, I heard.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've always used them.
Yeah.
Every school I've been in.
the teachers have to sign them or make sure they
Yeah.
write their assignments down, but
Yeah, I
that's,
mean, it's a good way to get kids learning.
yep.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you, Colleen.
That's good feedback.
Good find, Kelly.
It was Michelle's find.
Good find, Michelle.
And don't
Good find
please,
over there.
Been hot on that.
yeah, that's exactly like why we go through this process. So if you want to jump back, forward, like please don't apologize. This is what we're
I
here
got
for.
my notes, I'm good. I've gone through it about
I know you're not
6
gonna,
times. I've
like,
gone
be
through about 6
shy.
times already, so.
All right, page 17. I mean, I don't want to be spending 5 hours a night, but
What it is.
so page 17, we budgeted $13,701 for equipment. You see that's a slight reduction, and we have a listing of the various equipment that we anticipate we need. So that brings us into special education. Page 19. I will note special education this year, primarily due to the out-of-district tuition reduction, is actually would have been a reduction overall, except that we moved that preschool teacher from general ed into special education, but that was just a transfer. So this was a decent year when it comes to costs for special education. We are budgeting $107,449 for the special education director's salary. Page 20, we budgeted $958,172 for salary certified staff. So these are our special education teachers. You'll see there's a listing, and included in this account is transferring one of the positions to the IDEA grant, and one that's currently in ESSER into the IDEA grant as well. You'll see under proposed 24-25. So
I have a question, more maybe a technicality issue, like, because I know that one particular person's not here. Is it on page 20?
page 20.
Yeah,
I think we budget for her
That
because her
position?
job is,
okay,
because, the job
That's-
is still
thank
available,
you. Yep,
right? Am I right on that?
Yeah, it's the position, not the people. And we try, obviously, there's a person associated with every one of these positions, but when looking at the budget, we try to look at
it's
the
the salary.
position.
Okay.
Yeah, because the
So
position
the person's
could be filled, could be, could
It's
be
the
in
position
addition.
that needs to be filled, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
But is it
Doesn't matter if his
vacant?
name's there, but gotcha.
So is it vacant?
No, there is somebody there. It's
That's,
just-
Okay, so my question is so
Andrea.
if the person that is listed under the position isn't the actual person,
right, the position's still there, and it's,
but are they getting paid that amount of money?
No, well,
So we have a staff member listed who's currently covering a vacant position as well as doing some of the responsibilities of the position she was originally assigned to. She's getting paid one salary.
Right, no, that's not my question. My question is the person that is listed on here that is not actually doing that position,
are we talking?
She's getting paid the salary that she was contracted for. So the person gets paid their salary
Yep.
based on their years of experience and their steps. And the vacant position is budgeted at Masters plus 8, which is our typical mid-range salary step.
And it will likely not be that exact amount because we're just estimating. So we could hire someone at a lower step, we could hire someone at a higher step, but that's kind of a placeholder
That's the
that we're budgeting
monetary
for.
value for the position.
gotcha.
That's, we kind of go a midpoint.
I think you guys are you guys talking about the vacant position? Are you talking about the person that's who I'm talking about too?
So you're talking about the elementary school, right?
The preschool?
Yeah, that position is being filled with a long-term salary.
Right.
Right, but she's not making $91,000.
Right, I think that's
But if the person returns,
Yeah.
that would be
But
their
she
salary
has-
that we have to budget
She has
for.
the option to return.
She's scheduled to come back.
Okay.
So they have to budget for it, because if not, then we'll
It's
be.
gone, but it
All right,
doesn't,
I'm
it
just
doesn't
checking.
exist.
That's
fine.
fine, she gave her notice, so I guess I was wrong. And, all right, so I have another question. So, we're gonna go back through with this, right? Is that what we're doing?
I'm
Are we
sorry?
going through everything and then coming back through? No? Okay.
Well, we're going through everything, and then we can always go back to any question that you have.
Or
Okay, so-
proposals.
So,
What page are
the
you on, just so I can follow you?
20. So like for the first, all right, so for the first employee, without mentioning names, for the first employee, she did not get longevity last year. Is that what it is? LONG, that's longevity, correct?
Yes, that is.
So she did not get longevity last year, but this year she does. So why?
If you reach the top of the salary scale, you're entitled to a longevity payment, and you have the number of years of service.
Okay. So, okay, that makes sense. So that's a union position.
Yep.
So it looks like the salary she got a increase of $7,136 from last year to this year.
So it's not,
Is that,
so from last year's budget to this year's budget,
Mhm.
so what's missing from last year's budget is the cost of living adjustment and step that was embedded in the warrant article.
That's the
So
teacher.
that's
So
really
it
the
looks,
okay, that's what I was
so
asking.
This
it
is
looks
year one of
bigger
the,
than actually it
Okay.
was.
This
So
is
it's like
now year
skipping
one
a
of
year
the
if you look at last year
CBA
versus
with
this
all
year.
the
Should be year
new
what do you mean?
Two.
skipping a
two.
year?
And
Well,
year
because
one
last
was
year's
not.
budget didn't include the cost of living adjustment and the step
It was
Okay.
a separate.
because it was in the warrant article.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
So,
Okay.
yeah, no, good question.
Okay.
Also, in the years past, the PTO paid for the agenda books.
Oh, really?
But what does track attendance do?
Are you asking that, or are you
Yes.
saying that?
I am
Because-
asking that.
I would wonder if something like
I was
that
actually
could be
looking around the
a
room to see
request.
how many people here actually would know that.
I
PTO is
do
wonderful.
not know.
Wouldn't know that
They've been in the
technicality.
budget.
Sorry.
So they've been
They
in the
have been.
budget. It
That's
wasn't a
fine.
new addition to the budget. So I assume that we paid.
So when
And
we
according to
hire-
Lana,
Oh, sorry.
we paid. And I did the budget with her.
So I'll make sure we'll ask.
So when we hire staff, are we hiring them, how are we determining because there's a person here that, I'm just asking so I can understand this.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
If there's a person that just it says the seniority date was August 13th, 2023, so she's literally been here a couple months, if I read that correctly. But she's at a step 13M. How are we,
So the
So,
contract requires that we hire people based on, and pay them based on their experience. So if someone had prior teaching experience, they're
Oh, that's
placed
good
on
to
this.
know.
So salary
according
schedule is
to that
based on
experience.
total experience.
everybody.
Longevity is
Is
based
based
on
on-
experience here.
Here. Oh, okay.
So there's
Yeah.
a distinction there.
And
Yeah,
the
so if they
teachers
come
that-
from another school and they have 15 years of teaching, they're starting
That
at
counts.
Yeah.
that 15-year step, and then they get their longevity based upon how many years that they're in
okay,
our
Right.
Seabrook school
Yeah.
positions, and then
And for
Unless they
longevity,
count
right,
all.
it's 15 years and 20 years.
and then the
So
CAGS is
is
the
it
education,
across the
correct?
SAU
That's
or is it
principal,
specific
right?
to Seabrook?
It's across the SAU. So it's one CPA.
No, that's like your,
Okay.
that's your extra
Oh,
degree.
beyond a
So it's the
master's.
exact same salaries, exact same longevities.
Is that
Yeah, I
the
don't know what happened with
senior
yours.
need to be to get a principal seat?
so the August, so that date of August, so her hire date of August 13th, was that an open position that was posted and she was hired because she just started in August?
I'm not sure who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
none of us.
Well, am I allowed to say names?
Well, again, I guess I'm trying to understand what the question is. If
The
someone,
question is that her seniority date is August 13th, 23.
Yep,
She's new.
right,
Is this a position that was opened?
yep. Well, we had open positions in special education this
Okay.
year. Brian filled several. And we had a couple open at the middle school as well that were, we had two that we attempted to fill. One was filled, the other one remains open.
Okay. And then the track advance is what? Where's track advance?
So on a salary schedule, there's the steps. So that's years of service, and then the track advances is educational level. So
Yes.
you go from a bachelor's to a master's to a master's plus 15 credits. So that's the track advances.
And once you have your bachelor's, if you have like, if you're halfway to your master's, you get an extra.
Yeah, there's like a bachelor's plus 30.
Yeah, it's like plus however many credits you've completed with inside your educational scope or whatever, correct?
So you work your way down with steps and across with track advances.
And the number is years of experience. The letter then becomes the degree that they hold plus whatever new information that they're, or new credits that they get, plus CAGs, which is something
So
separate.
CAGs,
Yeah, where's
CAGs
CAGs?
and doctorate are separate stipend.
Yeah.
That's not on the salary schedule, but it's a stipend that you can receive.
Is it in their contract?
It's in the CPA. Yeah. All right, page 22. We budgeted $565,719 for our specialists, our special education specialists. That includes our occupational therapist, social worker, school psychologist, and BCBA. So this is the account that I had referenced earlier, where we are adding the social worker that's coming from ESSER, as well as the BCBA, who's a board certified behavior analyst, as well. I think there was some indication that we want to discuss those positions.
So you said we're adding a BC, PA,
BCBA,
and then what's the other one?
social worker.
Who's already been working here for 3 years. See?
2.
Two years, I believe.
So is it the two people that are listed up there?
No,
Oh.
so one person is listed
Oh, okay, I see
as
that right
under
now.
the proposed, and then the BCBA is that we just put again, that's like a placeholder. We don't know. It's a vacant position. I mean, it's not. It's a new position. Sorry, we're
Yep.
currently contracting out those services at a much higher rate through professional services. So we're looking to hire someone on staff as a BCBA, which is incredibly important when we're looking at some of our.
BCBAs are not part of the contract, if that's a question
But-
you're trying to have
that's-
answered.
That was my question, but it was related to the social worker. Are they part of the contract?
Yes,
They're
So-
part of the union?
the social workers. Yes.
I'm confused.
Social workers are recognized under the contract. BCBAs are not certified through the Department of Education.
Right.
So they cannot be, they're not recognized for the CBA.
But the social worker is certified through the Department of
Yes.
Education? Okay.
And they don't fall under the EA's union as well, correct?
No, they're non-union, so that's, so the social, so I'm sorry, the BCB, you know what type of day this is? This is a day that I put on a blue suit and black shoes.
Oh my goodness.
It's one of those
You
days.
actually had to look.
I didn't notice until like 3 o'clock this afternoon.
That does
I'm
not
like,
seem like
oh
a
my
very
gosh.
Matt thing to do.
Okay.
So-
At least in the same. So yes, the BCBA is non-union and receives the non-union 2.8% cost of living adjustment.
Who determines that? The 2 point, who determines the cost of living?
So the non-union cost of living adjustment is SAU wide, where we recommend an SAU wide cost of living adjustment. For the last 6 years, we've been benchmarking it against CPI, and that's for all of the SAU districts. For all of our non-union staff members is that rate.
And so where does the new position that was just hired through the Brook fundraiser, what position is that?
That's not in this budget.
Right, but we can use that.
That's
through.
That's
But
an SAU wide.
That's an SAU-wide
It's not a
position,
Seabrook position.
but it's for a
Well,
social
no,
worker
we had
for
to
the
accept, we had
whole.
to,
It's a
SAU.
social worker that can service all of our districts.
Right.
But it's shared across all 5 districts. So it's in the SAU. Well, it's not even in the SAU budget because it's funded
It's
through
outside.
donation. So
okay, so the social worker that we have up here on the top, not the one down below, You said that was she the position that was taken out of the ESSA funds and was put in the bottom line last year?
No, so the social worker above has always been in the operating budget.
Okay,
The social worker in the proposal has been an ESSER, and we're proposing to bring it into the operating budget.
right, and she's been here since January 10th, 22, not for 2 years.
So that'll be
Well,
2
this is
years
the
in
second
January.
year.
So the social worker above, why are we paying her $5,000 to work 10 additional days?
Well, that's, so for a number of positions, there's work that needs to be done over the summer, so that includes our school psychologists, our social workers, our guidance counselors, which is pretty standard and really necessary to have some summer work.
We're paying them $500 a day for 10 days?
Well, it's their per diem rate,
Plus,
so it's different based on whatever their salary is.
Oh my God.
You
For
said
10
plus-
days, we're paying an extra $5,000 on top of longevity of $2,800 and a salary of $94,000 and health benefits that are probably over $30,000. And we want to cut a teacher. Am I the only one that sees something wrong with this? $5,000 to work 10 extra days, and they work 180 days a year. Like, am I missing something?
We're in the wrong field, that's what we're in.
No, we're
Is this
not. We need to
contracted?
say, this, to me, that's taking advantage of a situation. That's just how I feel. $5,000 for 10 days.
Is this contracted as part of the CBA?
So we don't contractually need to pay for 10 extra days, but that's the amount for any extra days being. So their contract is 187 days.
Right,
So for what that proposal is for an additional 10 days, so 197 days, and it's at that same rate.
And how do you come up with the numbers of days that you think that they would need, or how do you, because I did see that on a couple of other staff members as well.
Yeah, so social workers and management help us with the trauma that happens over the summer. If we have students moving in, we have homeless issues over the summer. They also help us with planning and registration. So also social workers don't school vacations if we need support during school vacation. During holiday season, a lot of times the social workers are supporting, making phone calls, making sure people have housing. A lot of times heating is coming up right now, and if they're going home for Christmas break, we might need them to come in for a day to work with us, because administrators, we work all year long, and we still have those issues that happen, and we support them, we do the best we can, but a social worker in the summer is super important.
they're also supporting students who are identified for special education who receive counseling through the extended school year program with those direct services as well.
And our guidance counselors are 504 coordinators, so any 504 students that move in over the summer or school breaks, we need to immediately do an intake to the 504, and they're also writing and organizing 504 meetings over the summer. So technically what it looks like is a few days at the end of the school year to help us get organized, and a few days before the school year, and then some of those school vacations where a family might move in and have no heat, or they're all of a sudden they're homeless, there's something happened at their house and they're without adequate housing, or the code driving, we need to get organized. So there's a number of reasons, and those 10 days go really fast.
Right, but Brian, we have services in this town that these parents can reach out to. I mean, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but we're a school and we give education. But now I feel like we're not just a school. We're adding all kinds of services in here that at some point you have to look at. I've never looked at this, but I've actually recently looked at how many people in this town that don't have children in the school, and they're paying the taxes. And I know that myself, I have children in this school, so I'm looking outside the box. And if I was to look at this budget and I didn't have children, I'd be like, okay, you know what? As a taxpayer, it's my responsibility, even if I don't have children or my children are 29 years old, to pay the taxes to support these kids getting an education. But at this rate, they're not even paying for them to get an education. They're paying for people to make telephone calls that parents need to step up at some point. And I understand that not all parents do, but they're never going to I'm sorry, I cannot imagine making $500 a day for 10 days. To me, when you make $94,000 and then you get a stipend of $2,800, plus you get full health insurance and you're working 180 days a year, you should try to fit that in within the 180 days a year. Plus you have school vacations, okay? I'm not being insensitive, but so you mentioned about the homeless, but then we have a person down below that is, we have her down as making, for another 10 days, $4,700. I mean, at what point do we say, Seabrook, this is not an example of trying to do what's best for the taxpayers. I'm sorry, I cannot justify these positions being this is insane to me. You know what, if I didn't see the 5,000 for the 10 additional days and the 4,700 for the 10 additional days, I would still be concerned, but that to me says, like, nobody is really thinking about, okay, is this reasonable? At some point, we need to put some responsibility on the parents. We have a welfare department in this town, which she doesn't even make close to what, I mean, she's been there, I don't even know how many years, and she doesn't even make close to these salaries. And she works 300 and whatever days a year she works. And we have plenty of resources in this town that people can reach out to. Seabrook is, this building is not the resource for all. It's not, it's not a resource center. It's not a, Meredith, I know you feel strongly about this stuff, but you don't pay taxes in Seabrook.
I'm not trying to argue with you, Kelly. I just want to say that the job of a school social worker is to help children access their education. And so it's not necessarily about connecting them to heat. That is like, here's the number you need to call, right? It's not our social worker.
No, they're making the phone calls. I'm sure they're making the phone calls for them.
But largely their job is to try to make sure that the children can get to the education. And a large percentage of the time that these folks spend at school is working directly with individual students who are struggling when they come in on a day-to-day basis. I can tell you about a student that I worked with well, it's about a month now. I was going to say a couple of weeks ago. It's been a little longer. Whose family had lost their housing. And that child was really struggling to be present in the classroom on a day-to-day basis and be able to participate in math instruction because they were really worried about where they were going to sleep that night and where they were going to get food and who was picking them up and where they were going after school. A social worker is able to be a resource to that child who's going through that struggle so that they can then go back to math class and actually get the education they're coming to school to receive. So I just want to be clear that it's not about making phone calls that the parents should be making. It's about supporting the child so that they can be here to be present to receive instruction.
But we even have guidance counselors back here that we're paying for too.
And they're busy.
I'm not saying they're not busy, but at some point there's got to be a point where we draw the line. And I'm sorry, I cannot justify $5,000 for 10 days. I'm sorry, I can't. I mean, to me, that's taking advantage. And the fact that it's not contracted, where did we even come up with this number? Like, who even said, oh, okay, let's give an additional 10 days for $5,000? Like, where did that even stem from if it's not in the contract?
So it's pretty standard for these positions to work through this.
From where?
Through, as far as public education in general, that's these positions, they're asked to work some extra days. So you are you absolutely have the ability to, if you want to reduce days, you can, but they will just understand that there will be an impact on.
See, this is what you do. You make us feel bad, and that's what's not fair.
I don't mean to make you feel
bad. Well,
you
are. You are, and that's what you guys do. Every time we want to try to do what's best for the taxpayers, you make us feel bad. And it's not about we don't want the kids to get the service. It's not about that, Matt.
We're bringing forth a budget
we need to be
with
responsible.
Some significant reductions. And some
no, we're not. Yeah, we want to cut teachers, the people that we need to educate these kids.
And still give other people raises. I don't understand this.
But the raises, that piece of it is most of the time built into something that's already been done. So a lot of these things we're seeing now,
right? They're contractual. You can't do anything about that, but you can sure that will take care of this $5,000.
And I understand what you're saying. Like, it sounds like a lot of money for 10 days. To me, though, that small portion in terms of the entire budget, I'm hesitant to just say, well, they don't need 10 additional days, because we don't know that they don't need those 10 additional days. I would hope that administration would feel like administration in the building would say they really don't need to be doing that. They really don't need to be making those calls. They really don't need that time. But if they're saying, yes, we need these people for a few days here, a few days there, a few days there, I mean, I'm hesitant to just say that's a lot of money and just remove it, because again, I don't, as not being in the building myself, I would be hesitant to just snatch something like that out. The discussion is great though. I think it's important. We need to talk about the things. We need to hear why it's there, what the money is for, how it's all being figured out. But I would be hesitant to just remove it without more information of why it doesn't work. Yes, it's a lot of money for 10 days. That I will agree with. But I don't know that I would say that it's not needed unless in-building is telling us, we really don't need those days.
I personally, if I made $94,000 a year, I would not be complaining about coming in the extra 10 days. I would not even ask for $5,000, but that's just me. And in the position down below, do all the other schools in our district have a person assigned for that position? And are they on the board? How are they funding the person that we have below? Because I don't want to mention names.
What's the position?
The proposed the one below.
The VCBA
Yep.
position?
Nope. The
Social worker?
Yep. The one who gets the $4,700 for 10 extra days.
We have social worker at Winnicott, and we do not have a social worker at the Southampton, Northampton, and Hampton Falls.
Why?
Northampton has a full-time school psychologist for their school that picks up some of those pieces to
Yep.
offset the counseling piece.
This is the person that is the
Hampton.
McKinney-Vento Act. So she does that in the 504s. So we have someone that's just for that.
So we have
According to her
our
job
own, we have our own
description.
school psychologist, correct?
Correct,
And
for
we have-
650 kids,
And then we have two
2 school counselors. So
and
Northampton
then
is
two social workers.
correct.
So
And Hampton
those
Falls,
three
Northampton.
schools combined are still smaller than Seabrook, and the population is very different with very different needs.
And they have
That makes me mad when I hear that.
They have a combined 3 full-time school counselors across those 3 elementary school, 3 K-8 schools, as well as 1.8 psychologists plus a contracted psychologist for Southampton. And then they also have access to the SAU-wide social work position, as Seabrook does as well.
I didn't even see this down here. It says add full-time VCBA. So is that the one that's up here?
No,
No,
it's a new position.
And that's in addition to that one here?
Uh-huh. Is that gonna remove the contracted?
Number 2 are the proposed for 24, 25 on this page 22. That's the one to replace the contracted
Yes, thank you.
services, correct? Because
Yes.
contracted
Yes.
services is more expensive.
Correct.
Is that the purpose of that one?
Yeah,
Right,
but- okay.
it's
With
less
And
health
it's
expensive.
legally
insurance?
required. We have to we're legally required to provide that service based on our needs in the school. Is that right? PCBAs is one of those pieces.
Right, but we already have one. We have
Based
one up.
on need
Yes.
is our worst.
We have one up.
Are we federally mandated?
Do
to
they say you
provide
have to
this
have
second-
two?
Like, is this like
Well,
another
no,
one
but
of
we have
those?
2 schools. There's a middle school and the elementary school, and they can each only cover so many kids based off
on-
their needs. It might be exceeding that one individual BCBA's
So
threshold.
on the bottom where it says these increases will be partially offset by transferring 2 special ed teachers to the grant. But like I said, if we're transferring positions into a grant, down the road, that grant's gonna run out, and then we're gonna,
Well,
it's,
IDEA has been pretty consistent. So we move how we have a certain amount of IDEA funds, and on a year-to-year basis, we look at, what we're gonna fund out of that grant. So that's not something that's expiring, that we're gonna
That's a
transfer.
continuous grant, but not necessarily a set amount of funds, whereas the ESSER grant and,
ESSER we knew there was an expiration.
right, that was based on.
So how does he determine how much
Yes.
money we get for the IDEA grant?
It's based on the number of students you have identified for special education, and so we know that count. It basically comes kind of a year after, based on the count of the prior year and based on the federal allocation. But we have a pretty good history of what those funding, or what that funding has been historically, and so we project based on the historical.
I'm not
I got a question. I saw that the
I cannot
numbers of
justify
special
this.
education students have gone up, and we're decreasing our overall number of students. Like, is this just the trend nationwide that we're getting more and more people put on to special education? With the numbers that go down with student population and then special education numbers going up,
So they get transferred over, is that?
it's just, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around some of this stuff. And it just seems like that's just one, and again, I understand the federal mandate guideline, if you have them, you have them, but when does the pendulum swing back and it seems like we've gone from one side of not ever caring about special education, and now we have, and nobody was ever treated for it. Now we're literally on the full swing of the side. It's a black hole of money. Like, it's a lot of money.
So the regular education's down 166,000, but special ed is up 66,000. So what does that tell you? Regular education is down 166,000,
Well,
but we're,
about 80 or 90,000 of that is preschool teacher that we moved from general ed
Okay.
to special ed.
like I said, I
But
mean,
it's the same position. So we're right in line when it comes to percentages. I mean, the state of New Hampshire is roughly just over 19% of students are identified. When you ask about a pendulum, previously there weren't laws in place to service students, so and there currently are. So unless laws change, this is our current reality, right? And that we are going to service students with disabilities.
well, then they're gonna have to step it up because we can't keep doing this. I mean,
Unfortunately,
it says we have to service them, Matt. It doesn't say that we have to keep adding staff after staff after staff when the numbers are going down. That makes no sense. Seabrook's lost 15 students in a year. The other schools have not lost any. Meanwhile, we're adding staff after staff after staff. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm all set with the grants. Don't even apply for them because I will never approve them. They're nothing but they set you up. They're a Band-Aid. And they just cause a nightmare because you put all these staff into place with grants, and then all of a sudden the grant comes through and everybody's spending money and life is great, we have all this extra money, and then all of a sudden the money runs out, for example, these ESSA funds, and we have all this staff here, and all of a sudden the tax rate goes up.
Well, there are 3 staff members, and those would be in the operating budget regardless, because they're special education positions.
Now, we can still service students without adding, we're just gonna have to, people are gonna have to just take on more caseloads.
There's only so many hours in the day, and
Yeah.
number of students that
I know.
keep the individual can service. So I mean,
Is there a specific
our
number
enrollment's decreasing, but our number of special education students are not. But where we're right in line, like I said, we're at state averages or below. We're significantly below on a cost basis. So, I mean, like I said, only 17% of our budget is special education, as opposed to 25% statewide. That's like I said, that's $1.275 million less than the state average. So,
But they're working 180 days a year, maybe an extra 10. We're not talking about a full year here. We're talking 180 days. The city of Boston has 1 speech therapist. We have 3. We're not,
that's absolutely not true.
it is true, I called. Don't tell me it's not true, I called. I'm not lying.
Boston Public Schools
Would be
has
in court.
many more
I
speech
called.
therapists.
I
So-
called, I'm not lying, I'll give you the number and who I spoke to.
So is there, with the federal laws and stuff, is there a specific number of, like, do we have a teacher-student ratio that you are mandated to follow, or is it you just have to provide, like,
So every child's individual education team, right, which includes the parent and the teacher and related service providers depending on what their disability is. It can be an occupational therapist, it can be a speech therapist, it can be a school
It
psychologist.
can also be a BCBA.
Yep, it meets to determine what that child needs with respect to services, right, to be able to make appropriate growth in their education, to receive a free and appropriate education. There can be a range of things offered, right? It can be a one-to-one paraprofessional that a child may need in order to maintain safety and self-regulate throughout the day, right? Without, it can be 2 hours of speech a week, right, that they need. It can be direct instruction from a reading specialist or the special education teacher. So we take that list of all those services for all of our identified students and we total up those hours. And we have to build in lunchtime and a planning time for everyone who's part of the teacher contract. And we have to build in time for our paraprofessionals to be able to have lunch. And we total all of those up and we figure out how many people do we need to accomplish meeting all of those needs. And we take into account, like, some kids can be treated in small groups. Right, so we plan that some kids are going to be in a group of 3 to 5 to receive some of that specialized instruction, or some kids might be receiving occupational therapy in a group of 2, where they're working on particular skills that go together. So we map all of that out, and then we say how many hours of service do we need, and that's what we budget for.
so I guess that my next, like, absolute point blank question is, can we get by with one less social worker in the school, or do we have to provide? Are we mandated legally to provide an extra social worker, and can we get by with one less social worker?
So right now, the IEP hours of social work services exceed the capacity of one social worker. So if you don't have an additional social worker, you'll be contracting to have those services provided to students.
And it cannot be picked up by the BCPA that comes in.
It's a different service. So a BCBA is a board certified behavior analyst. So they're working often with children identified with autism to provide specific training plans, sequences, activities to support them in developing their skills and extending those beyond just sort of a discrete setting into other settings.
To be able to carry over skills and transfer them.
So none of the other positions that are currently being added can.
But I think what you were
Fill.
asking though was specifically the social worker. What
Well,
correlation
yeah,
does that
like, I
have
just feel like,
with the IEP?
again, we have a social worker in place, we have a lot of town assets for some of this stuff.
Right.
Again, I'd rather see a teacher than an additional social worker or two.
Right.
I just want to know, like, again, as point blank as I can get the question, like, are we legally mandated to have it? Do we absolutely need it? And can we make things work with one less?
So again, we have students whose IEPs call for direct service from a school social worker. One school social worker cannot meet all of the needs in those IEPs. It's more than 30 hours a week. I can't remember the exact amount. Mary would have that data. We can find that for you. And so if you don't use the
Gotcha. So the,
hire the
so the
social
answer
worker,
is
you have
no,
to
we
contract.
cannot get around
You
it.
could
We'll have to
contract
call-
for
You can't even
part-time
contract
service.
it out. I mean,
But then it
There
would
would
end
be
up
more
being
money, wouldn't it?
potentially.
And that's
Yeah, but
even
if we,
with-
you know what,
and
last
that's even with having the additional person in the SAU through the new Brook initiative. That's a social work position, correct? Even with them on board, we wouldn't be able to cut one of the positions here.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so
They're still.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to.
These two staff members, I don't know that they even stop for breaks. They're literally so busy supporting students all day long, and students all day long. And they've even gone above and beyond. They have interns here as well. Our response teams are there nonstop. They're almost, most IEP meetings they're involved in some way, and
Are-
they're nonstop.
Are the interns, is it like it's based off of their schooling, right? It's not a non-paid position?
They're not.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's what I thought.
Meredith, this chart that you sent me about the percentage of special ed, where it says Seabrook Elementary, it says 2024 number sped 62. Does that mean 62 students?
Mhm.
Okay, so 62 students for the elementary in 24. In 23 we had 63. So, and then in 22 we had 62. So the count really hasn't changed, but we're adding more staff. Then in the middle school, we have, in 22 there was 50, 23 there was 60, but there was also 66 in 24. So that's literally a change of, from 23 to 24, 6 students. So you're telling me that in a matter of 2 years, so in 23 we went, the elementary school 23 we went from 63 students to 62, so we dropped down one. And then 23 we went from 60 to 66 in the middle. So that's literally 6, that's 5 special ed students increase in a year, and we can't fit those 5 students in with one
So-
social worker. It's
so-
5 students.
So I think the misconception would be that all students need the same things, or that those 5 students would be the only reason that those needs would change. But and those 62 students are not the same students every year, right? Because we have students who move in through K, students who move up to the middle school, students who transition into middle school and up to high school. But those are the decisions made by the individual education plan team, right? Not by me, not by Colleen, not by Brian, not by Matt, not by Mary. The team that includes the professionals who know that child and the parent come together to decide what does that child need. And the teams have decided for the 128 children, or 128 children, that
Yeah, we have 2
those are
schools.
the number of supports that they need.
But I'm right though, it's a difference of 5 students.
Yes, it's a difference of 5 students.
That's all I'm saying. I mean, to me, that's 5 students. It's not like we have 15 or 20. So last year we added more staff. Now we're going to add more staff this year. And the other thing is that what happened, why is it that, I know a lot of students, they have health insurance. Why are we not, isn't there, I don't know, maybe I'm old school, but I know that when I was in school, we had one guidance counselor. We did have special ed services, obviously, but we had one guidance counselor, and if there was issues going on, the parents would get an outside referral and they'd use the insurance. Are we not doing that anymore?
So there are obviously students who see outside professionals, but there are also students who need support during the school day, who are dysregulated or struggling emotionally, or have specific skills that they're needing to develop because maybe they struggle with their social skills. And those are skills that a social worker or a guidance counselor, depending, may be working directly with those children on.
But do we refer them out?
We
Are we
do.
still doing that?
Can I
Absolutely.
just say that we
Yeah.
had parents today who came in and there was a 3 to 4 week waiting list, just trying to get a daughter into a place, so.
And-
So the cost is huge, but that's one of many.
We have Seacoast Mental Health as a provider that comes into the building on a regular basis. We have Seacoast Youth Services provides another almost full-time position to us through a grant that is here full-time providing services to students. And those folks are all at capacity.
So if we were to provide this social worker, then that means that we would absolutely we would not need to pay for any contracted services. We'd not need any
For
more,
social work contracted services,
any of them.
well, they're, occupational therapy is a different service than social
Yep,
work.
and we have an occupational therapist.
And as Matt explained earlier, if the contracted service portion of that is because it's more than a full-time caseload can manage. So we have more than enough children, and we're not at the point where it tips into it being more cost-effective to hire a second full-time occupational therapist.
And we're also budgeting a year out, so obviously things change and we could have students move in or move out, so it could.
Right, that was
it
my
could
point about the
be-
teacher.
It could be that we have less services that are necessary or more services that are required. And students' needs also change and IEPs change.
So when when we were discussing not removing a teacher, we were told that we kind of, you know, we really can afford to remove a teacher because we don't foresee a change. But when we're talking about this, we have to make sure that we add services in case more students come in.
No, we're basing it on the services that we have now. So
Okay.
that's it's in both cases we're basing it on the known quantity, both general ed and special ed students today. So
Right. Well,
there's
when it
no
comes time to vote, I'm definitely going to be the bad guy here. So I'll just take the stance on that right now because I'm sorry.
And also, please note
6:15.
we're making recommendations, but ultimately it's your decision. So, did you?
Yeah,
Do we
this was
want
the time, I
to
think,
do we
that
want to call this and pick up right here at on the
The next-
4th?
Yes.
I'd appreciate it if you would.
Yep.
Thank you.
So-
I appreciate it.
We're gonna call this meeting at 6:16, and
I
we have
have to
another
go.
meeting on December 4th, and then a follow up on the 8th.
Well, we gave it through 23.5 minutes.
165.
I thought we said 65.